So let's talk about fear. Because fear is the mechanism in which the Matrix uses to control all of us. And it's something that I still have problems with. I think all of us will until the aliens come, honestly. And obviously, that's what keeps everybody in their places. There's so much fear. Fear of bills, fear of losing your house, fear of your children getting hurt, if you're a parent and they go to school, especially if you're a black parent here in this country. Fear of being hurt by the police, if you're, Hispanic or Latinx or any of that kind of stuff. Black people fear death from police or other white people. We fear that we won't have enough to survive. We fear that we will get in trouble because we're not paying our bills. We fear leaving our families behind because they're our families and our friends that we love, if you're on this path, this Starseed path. Fear of people's perception of us. Fear of leaving behind religions, fear of leaving behind any type of identity. There's so much fear that controls us here in this society that, I don't even realize, a lot of us just, don't consciously realize, when we're going through fear itself. And a lot of mine has to do around money, because obviously I'm very poor. And, those are, my main and also, that I'm never going to get out of here. That's probably my two biggest fears. Because, it's just been so hard to be here. And God keeps telling me that, I'm going to have this, miraculous situation happen where somebody's going to come help me. Get me out of here. Because, I can't get out of here myself. Even if I got a job that paid, $100,000, I still could not get out of here. So I do need, a miracle. I need, assistance. I need, help from some person, basically. And so, that's been, my biggest fear. Is that, I'm going to be stuck here for God knows how long or whatever, and I'm not going to be able to pay my bills and, all this stuff. And I've been living with that fear since I got here, which is, 18 months ago. And I trusted God that he was going to help me because I had to leave, a domestic abusive violence situation. And then I got here and Florida wouldn't take my nursing license, so I haven't been able to get a job. Even, regular jobs I've been applying to, friggin' waitressing jobs and stuff like that, I just cannot get a job. So for 18 months I've just been trusting with faith in God, that kind of stuff. And other people face other fears, they're afraid to talk to people, or they're afraid to take a risk, or they're afraid to do what God's calling them to do. To follow this starseed path, to have the beliefs that they want to have. There's a lot of people that have different fears, right? I think a lot of people's fears right now too are around this nation, that nothing's ever going to change, and that we're always going to have Trump as a president, or the Republicans are always going to have power, or fascism is always going to be here and we're never going to get out of this horrible situation in this country. People in Afghanistan, they fear that especially women, that they fear that they'll always be controlled, that they will always be under the helms of what's going on over there, that they can't speak in public, that they can't even go to a doctor without a man's help, that they have to cover their faces, So what I've learned in my life with fear, because I've lived with it all my life, this is just the fear that I'm going through right now, but throughout different periods of my life, I had different fears. And God is always testing our fear at different points in our lives. Sometimes he tests our fear more than other times. This has been a really hard time for me lately. But obviously there's people all around the world going through different levels of fear right now. And one thing that I've always learned is that when fear comes up, it always passes. Fear, the feeling of fear, it always passes and we always end up okay. For the most part. That's here in America. I can't And again, it doesn't go for everybody, but I say the majority of people, especially here on this starseed new earth path. That's really who I'm talking about. But fear always passes when it comes up. It comes up, you feel it, you're afraid, you're scared, and then that feeling always passes and you always go back to, okay, everything's going to be okay. Everything's going to work out for me. God's going to help me. God's going to help us. That's really where I've been lately, especially with like looking at the stuff on the outside, is that God's going to help us. He has to make this right. It's too far. It's too deep. It's too oppressive to get out of, on a human to human level, which is why he gave me the channels about the aliens. I feel that so deeply. I feel so grounded in that belief. I feel so grounded in the channels and the beliefs that God has given me, because it's the only thing that's given me hope. It's the only thing that I have also. We have nothing else right now. We literally don't have anything else. Otherwise, it's just spiral into like the old shit, which is like, this place is never going to change. Why would it change now? That's another question I get. Why would it change now? It's never changed. And to that I say Christ consciousness is the only reason why I truly believe that this is going to change for the first time ever, because we have so many channelers, getting this information that's going to change. We have so much evidence of like people seeing orbs and, having this spiritual awakening experience and coming to revelations about Christ consciousness and stuff like that. So we're seeing like all the things in Revelations, in the Bible play out in real life right now. And we're seeing so much truth come out too. That's the other thing that I know about truth, is that like once it's out, our nervous systems and our brains and our bodies cannot sustain that level of deception, living with that without like some sort of change. Change has to occur. And that's the thing about me too, is I've been waiting almost 31 years for change, for God to like deeply change my life, for me to finally get a break in my life, for things to finally work out for me, to feel finally stable. I've never felt stable in my life. I felt stable for periods, and then God always like ripped the rug out from underneath me. Like bad too. It wasn't just like little, which is why I have so much like trauma and like stuff, and like why it's going to take me still so long to heal, because so much bad shit has happened in my life. So again, it also like matters on the duration and length that you've been living with fear too, or that you've been living with trauma. Will depend on how you heal also. But this is all God's given me, is that like things are going to get good and things are going to work out for us. And I know it looks bleak and hopeless right now for so many of us. Like for me, obviously, it's like the worst it's ever been financially ever in my entire life, which is like hard, because it's like, you dedicate your life to God, and this is what God does to you. And like he's asking me to do the opposite, and like just have this like it's like not just like a little bit of blind faith, it's like extreme. I'm on an extreme path of blind faith and blind hope that God is going to help me. And then like he keeps not, except for like my mind. Like luckily he's healed my mind. Like I will say like that's helped a lot, but it's just like unfortunately like it's just not enough when you don't have physical change. You have to go through like the demons of hopelessness, of despair, of fear, of anxiety, of everything, of all the programming, of all the demons, all the voices, all the illusions, that, because that's like what we're in right now. We're in a world of like 3-dimensional illusions that will disappear someday here, but God has us in a waiting period, and that's like really hard again for like why, like for people, but like we have nothing else. We either sit in this waiting period with hope, or we sit in this waiting period destroying ourselves, and that's like unfortunately where again God's put me. And like I've said, he's not much of a God of choices, but one thing I've learned about all of those things is that they always pass, and that you're always okay at the end of it. So don't let fear or anxiety or despair or hopelessness consume you or hold you back, because it always passes. Fear is an illusion. It's a mechanism of the Matrix to keep you trapped in their games that they're winning, and they're not winning. God is. So that's what I have to say about that.